the sword of Mercury. And today, we are going to be basically understanding how you escape the Matrix forever. And I don't mean in some kind of conspiracy sense, but in actual how our physiology and psychology operates, especially with that aspect of consciousness coming in at some higher dimension. So, let's get straight into it. So, today we're going to be looking at the physics and the, just geometry of it. I'm not going to refer to it as math, but, you can kind of think of shapes as somewhat math because it has dimensions to it. But essentially, if we look at how reality is constructed around us, we can kind of understand how we work with this human body and where our consciousness, if it's not internally generated and does continue after death, or the process which we term as death, which more so just represents a point in transition or a point in time, really, even though time in higher dimensions doesn't exist, but I digress. Essentially, if we look at it from the lens that nothing is ever beginning and nothing is ever ending, and everything is almost in this entangled state, which they term in physics, entanglement basically in a short nutshell is just that the ability to manipulate interconnected particles over an infinite distance faster than the speed of light. So for instance, if I have one marker and I have another marker and I put them both on the opposite side of the cosmos and they're entangled and I move one marker, the same thing will happen to the other marker instantaneously. So that's kind of similar to how we construct things with our imagination. You imagine something, it's instantly there, right? But in the physical realm, when you want that thing to manifest, there's an energy delay or time lag. And the reason for that is because where we have the flat space-time continuum, there is not this time lag, there's no energetic lag, because, and this is why most dimensional beings, who we might term as aliens or advanced beings in the cosmos, likely exist in higher dimensions such as angels and whatnot, because here there is no energy lag, everything is instantaneous, and this is essentially the what we would term OBE state, or out of body or near death experience state, where there's no energetic lag in things manifesting. There's no gap between information. You can go anywhere as long as you think of it. So, in essence, Earth, in the material realm, there's an energy lag, because as we know, as Einstein theorized, I don't know if you can see here, as you can see here, that's probably better. Here we have Earth, as you can see, and Einstein theorized that this flexible fabric, space-time, can be distorted by gravity, and gravity is what tethers energy into the physical realm. You can almost think of it as an energetic anchor, and though it keeps you grounded, it also prevents you from realizing the full scope of your ability, unless you can energetically overcome that force. Similar to how a boy can, jump and leave the Earth's gravity for a few seconds before coming back down. You have to exert energy that overcomes that force of gravity. In any sense, there's an energy lag here because of this quality. And it's, as we can see here also too, you have the dimensional space that is explaining some of this, where we have 3D, 2D, 1D, and all of these are the planes in which we can interact with in our dimension that we are in here on Earth. But in these higher dimensions, there are more dimensions, even all around us right now, but we can't interact with them with certain physical sensory perception, the extrasensory perception. We can get a peek into that, right? but it's really all dependent on your energy state. So, Earth, you can imagine, is this sphere down here almost, or a circle, and consciousness is almost like a higher dimensional aspect that can cut through all the dimensions, and in between you have a spiritual thread which tethers your being, your soul, to the physical plane, and that is the same spiritual thread that is present whenever you project something, right? So let's say you use your imagination to visualize something like, I don't know, the Earth from space or whatever. You are projecting that image, or you're projecting that information at some level that creates a spiritual thread to then which you can then see manifesting through your imagination. And that happens with anything you can conceptualize or anything you think of. There's a spiritual thread, also known as a soul or heart thread, that connects those two things. So, understanding that is important, because when you understand that everything is connected by spiritual threads, you can then move in the direction of the spiritual threads that you wish to align with in this physical realm. So, when we go back to looking at this diagram, what does this mean? So, essentially, here in the flat space-time continuum, where all the energetic beings exist and they don't need to materialize in physical realm, physical matter like angels, there's this intangibility aspect to them where they can phase through anything, kind of like a ghost, right? They'll go like they're going ghost, right? Like Danny Phantom, basically. They could go intangible and phase through anything. Angels, in some sense, can actually possess people in very subtle ways, because their possession link is actually very objective, in a sense where, let's say, for example, you are asking the cosmos for some piece of information, and you say, angels, please, give me a sign or whatever. So when you have a conversation with the next person you meet, that person might say things that align with what you are looking for, and you will be receptive to that. And part of it is that the angel is medium-shipping the energy between you, because you call that energy from some higher dimensional plane. So, almost like looking into a pond. For us, we can see everything in the pond looking downwards, but things in the pond cannot look up and see us, right? Because they're in a lower dimensional plane. They're in 2D. From this kind of perspective, or this kind of analogy, they're in a two-dimensional plane. We're in a higher dimensional plane of 3D, in which we can look down into the dimensions of 3D, 2D, 1D, but we can't look up into 4D, right? So this is kind of what it's like, for example, when we're trying to conceptualize something like a tesseract. We can't conceptualize it because it's in a dimension beyond that of which our sensory perception, our physical sensory perception, has access to. So in essence, when this occurs, it's the same phenomenon taking place with why we can't always see when or how our manifestation or things around us are going to happen, because the energy will always be in a higher dimensional state before it manifests. So unless you have a way of disconnecting from your physical sensory perception to then observe it with what is somewhat termed extrasensory perception, in which you are seeing with an aspect of sensory perception above that of the normal physical, then you cannot see this picture, right? And even a lot of the times, even if you do have access to sensory perception or extrasensory perception, you cannot see this completely, because the energy is always coming from some higher dimensional state, right? So it's almost like, the reason why the pyramid comes into a lot of spiritual things or a lot of spiritual imagery is because it's what the spiritual essence of the pyramid represents. If somebody is standing at the top of the pyramid, they can see down and see all the people at the bottom, but it's hard for somebody at the bottom to get the same viewpoint of everything, seeing the whole landscape as somebody at the top can, right? So this is the concept of what is going on with why ancient civilizations build pyramids and stuff like that. It's because they represent a higher state of consciousness that is being utilized here. So this is pretty much the gist of what I have for you today. And if aliens or angels or any higher dimensional beings beyond the intelligence level of ourselves exist out there, they likely exist in higher dimensions, right? I'm not saying I believe in aliens, I'm saying if they exist, this is likely where they reside. They reside in a higher dimension in which they appear invisible to us, just like something swimming in the water, swimming in the ocean. If we were up on land, we would appear invisible to it because we are seeing from a higher viewpoint than it. So, this is the same reason ego typically exists on Earth and not so much with spiritual beings who have moved on, because fire is what connects us to the ego and the shadow, and fire is that willpower that is driven by the duality of the material world, the mental duality of the physical world and the material plane. And this is a separate concept. This is kind of related to more of this concept, but this is essentially kind of also explaining why time acts weird as you approach the speed of light, because as you move faster, you get heavier and you attain more energy and you warp time more. You're traveling with a time distortion around you, because as Einstein theorized, as E equals mc squared, light, mass, and energy are connected essentially, and they can all transfer into each other. So when you approach a faster speed, when you approach the speed of light, you attain more energy, and that energy is almost the equivalent of having more mass, and more mass is the equivalent of distorting time more. So time slows down and it gets compressed. It gets compressed as you move faster, so it gets compressed until it's almost a singular point. I'm not going to get into how that maybe parallels some of the themes of a singularity, but if you're familiar with physics, then you know what a singularity is, and you know that's the only thing that can actually overcome the energy potential of light. So, in any case, this is what I have for you today. And I know this wasn't as much of an ASMR trigger episode as much as it was me just explaining kind of the physics and spirituality around consciousness and higher dimensions, and the space-time continuum, as well as our conscious viewpoint. So if we can almost, whenever we go about things, always use this third-person perspective of understanding that our consciousness resides in this flat space-time and is being projected onto this lower Earth plane, then we can move with objectivity and we can project clearly in a sense where you have an understanding of just how your consciousness's energy actually materializes into the physical dimension. So this is what I have for you today. This is what the Prince has for you today. On spirituality and physics and how they overlap. A lot of the time they do. Let me know if you enjoy this content. I encourage you to like and subscribe and help support the channel. Be sure to check out my other channel, Moon Struggle, link it in the description below. Please help support the channel. Please share it with your friends or family or colleagues or anyone who might be interested in this type of work, because it does really help me to continue producing this content and keep assisting you guys with your spiritual journey as well as my own. Again, my podcast is called Moonstruck. If you want to see a longer format of stuff like around black holes and wormholes, then check that out. The episodes are typically almost an hour in length, so they're a bit longer. So if you enjoy me talking for a long time, then you can hear me talk about that in a professional studio. So that is what I have for you today. Once again, this has been the Sword of Mercury, brought to you by the Prince of Mercury, and thank you for watching. I really appreciate all your guys' support. I love reading your comments and replying to them, so thank you very much for all your support, and I hope you guys have snuggly dreams. Thanks for watching. Be sure to like and subscribe and follow me on Instagram at top_sorcerer, and I'll see you next time on the Sword of Mercury.